Good evening, and welcome to episode 25 of the Rolling Thunder Scotch Review. I'm your boy, Dr. Krish Tiwari. Be sure to make sure you're subscribed to the channel, hit the notification bell. We drop new content every week, and be sure if you enjoyed the episode to smash that like. When we get to 50,000 subscribers, we're going to have a giveaway, a bottle of the batch number 1 of the Abomination. It's from a local distillery called the Lost Spirits Distillery in Los Angeles, and a Batman statue that I'll select from my collection with the box and all the packaging. This evening is it's Wednesday, August 5th, 2020, and this is the episode 25. This is the special edition, or the LGBTQ special edition. And we are going to go ahead and talk about key representatives or members of the LGBTQ community that have transformed culture. And with me today, I got Dr. Luke, what's your last name again? Schmidt. And Alyssa Bruniak. So good. So before we get into you two, I think there's a bit of congratulations that's in order. So U.S. News and World Report just announced last week that your department at UC Irvine, the GYN department, is number 16 in the country. You know, after Cedars and Stanford, you guys are 3rd in California. So congratulations, and everything you guys are doing to take care of patients, really appreciate it. That's huge.
We're pretty proud.
A week before, Newsweek announced that UC Irvine's is one of the best maternity hospitals in the United States. So that's big.
Yeah.
That's big. And then, you know, not to toot my horn or maybe to toot it all, I was listed as the 18th best specialist in gynecologic cancers worldwide by Expertscape. So I'm honored that 17 people above me are phenomenal physician scientists. 14 of them are medical oncologists that do amazing work giving chemotherapy to their patients, and the other 3 above me are GYN oncologists like myself. So I'm very honored and humbled to be in the company. But overall, it's been a great 2 weeks. But the icing on the cake is what's happening with our young people. And Paul Wadensweiler, is that his name?
Yeah.
Matched this morning to urogynecology at Dartmouth.
Yeah.
It's going to be an Ivy League snob, phenomenal program. And our own Carly Crowder, no one's ever, accidentally called her curly because her hair is not curly, but Carly Crowder matched to the urogynecology department here at UC Irvine. So we want to shout out to them and congratulate them. So it's been great.
Yeah.
Before we start, Alyssa, tell us about yourself. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to undergrad? Where did you go to medical school?
So I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. That's where I grew up. And I also went to undergrad at the University of Missouri, and then I went to med school there too. So me coming to residency here was the first time that I have not lived in Missouri, and I came all the way to California.
Excellent. And so Alyssa's special to me for a couple reasons. One, my former fellow, Mark Hunter, he did a fellowship here at UC Irvine. I think I was only involved in maybe a couple of years of his training because after my fellowship I was at Kaiser for a few years. But Mark Hunter is the division director of GYN oncology at the University of Missouri. And when Alyssa was thinking about, where should she go for residency, he told her there's nowhere better to go than UC Irvine. Mark Hunter was not only a fellow at UCI, but he was a resident. So Mark delivered Alyssa to us. The other reason I'm intrigued by Alyssa is there's a strong possibility she may go into GYN oncology. Am I right?
Yes, there is. You're right. And one of the other reasons I wanted to come here is because not only was Mark Hunter, he just was a really accepting person, and knowing that I was someone who is part of the LGBTQ community, and knowing that he thought this program was very accepting and things like that, it was one of the other reasons I wanted to come to this program, and then also to California.
Very nice. Great. Well, welcome, and thanks again. And you're a 3rd-year resident now, is that right?
Right now.
So good. So, and again, you're really huge accolades for all the great patient care you do. We would not be listed in U.S. News and World Report without the phenomenal care people like yourself and Dr. Schmidt give to our patients. And tell us about your youth. Where did you grow up? Undergrad and med school?
Yeah, I'm from York, Pennsylvania. It's like right outside of our capital, Harrisburg. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a small town. I went to undergrad at McDaniel College. It's a small liberal arts school outside of Baltimore. And then medical school, I moved to the city finally, got to Philadelphia, went to Drexel University. That's where I really kind of started to learn about the LGBT community myself, accepting myself and becoming part of it. And then super excited to come out to California to UC Irvine, similarly to Alyssa, where I thought it would just be a lot more comfortable environment, and loved UCI when I did an away here. I knew it was the right fit, so really happy I'm here.
Well, fantastic. And I noticed you have a pug on your lap.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's interesting. His name is Pug. And so when he goes to the dog kingdom for their pack walks and stuff, they're all disturbed that he doesn't have his own name and that his name is Pug, but whatever.
Yeah.
So Luke's also very special to me. When he was a medical student, he did an away elective here at UC Irvine. And he was phenomenal. So phenomenal, did such a great job that I wrote him a letter of recommendation. And whether it helped him get in or not, I don't know, but I'm so thrilled that he's here. And you're also a third year resident, is that right? Brand new. And so the two of you are in the same class?
Yeah.
Okay. And then tell me your plans.
I think most likely I'll be a generalist.
Okay.
I'm considering minimally invasive gynecology.
Okay.
MIGS, pretty much where I've narrowed it down to.
Okay, great. And then I want to shout out to all our free thinkers, and here our live audience today is Luke's husband, Dan, and then also Dana. Dana's doing a sub-internship with us here at UC Irvine. She's a UC Irvine medical student. She has distinguished herself by not only coming this evening to support us and be part of the fun, but also she came to our program that we had with the other resident. What was Danielle, I think, right? Yeah, and, those people who follow me on Instagram, you'll be able to see a photograph from that evening. Make sure you smash that like. All right, so let's with these introductions, let's go ahead and get started.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, like I said, let's get started. Before I jump right into it, I want to. Oh, look what we have on our cast today. That Aberlour. This is a Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey. It's from the smoky part of Scotland, and this was gifted to me by my residents that just graduated. Nisha,
I can't
Rachel,
remember them anymore.
Teresa, Brad,
Mel Perez.
Marisa Lou, did you say?
Marisa Lou, who's one of my fellows. So we're gonna break this bad boy open and sample it later.
We'll think of it.
We'll get to them. We'll get to them. But they were a great class, and they presented this to me at the Bahia Corinthian Yacht Club. I'd taken them on the Duffy for cruising around, drinking champagne. And then we had dinner at the yacht club, and they gave this to me, and that was really thoughtful of them. I've been waiting for a good Rolling Thunder episode to break this open, and we'll sample this later. We have 5 tasting glasses here because not only do we have the 3 of us, but we've got Dan and Dana. Okay, so last thing, I just want to make a mention for long-term subscribers know this, but if you're new to the channel, the Rolling Thunder Scotch Review was named after Bob Dylan's Rolling Thunder Review, a tour in 1975, and we'll probably be talking about Dylan a little bit in this episode. So, look what we have on the laptop. End of the World Jeopardy! So we've got a new 10-part series, where I ask my guests, how do you think the world's going to end? I think episode 22, I had Dr. Lindsay Minion, one of my former G1 oncology fellows, just graduated. Her husband, Roland, I'm trying to remember her new last name, Roland Ford. He's a minister, and he's now in the seminary, so he thought the world was going to end by drum roll. I don't know if you can see that, but Roland thought divine intervention or judgment day. So on that episode, we talked about all the world's religions, et cetera, and we sampled the Balvenie. Then I had Travis Korinaga. Travis is one of my current fellows, and he's part Japanese, and he thought the world was going to end by nuclear holocaust. And so that episode was called Travis Korinaga is
Big in Japan.
Big in Japan. So, and then we talked about all great things Japanese, from origami to sushi to samurai. Samurai's my thing. And then we sampled a nice Japanese whiskey called Saturo. Then I had Juliet Wolford's husband on the channel for episode 23. And he works in robotics. And so naturally, he thought the world was going to end by AI revolt, artificial intelligence revolt. If those of you who saw that episode, we talked about probably 30 of the most famous robots in cinema. We talked about Isaac Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics, talked about the Da Vinci surgical robot, his own work in robotics, and then we drank some of the Macallan. Episode 24, of course, was my lovely wife Megan, and we didn't talk about the end of the world because she thinks I'm already too negative, so we did snack crate unboxing from Hawaii. But I want to ask you, Alyssa and Luke, how do you think the world will end?
Yeah, we were talking about it, and we're a little worried it might end from something like a mixture of hate and discrimination.
Yeah, I
All right.
agree. Hate's been really affecting us, everyone in society a lot recently, and I think that could be it.
All right.
Something to consider.
Well, you click that bad boy, and so we got hate there. So there's 10 to 12 possible ways the world's going to end. So this is a 10-part series. We're on part 4. Why don't you give us a click here?
Yeah.
So those of you who can't see it, it's Welcome to the Rolling Thunder Scotch Review, episode 25, the special LGBTQ edition. Tonight's guests, Alyssa Bunyak and Luke Schmidt. So what I thought we'd do is talk about this. I'm a big Springsteen fan, huge Springsteen fan. What really struck me is 2 years ago, we're in 2018. It's not 2001. 2 years ago in 2018, Springsteen had this thing called Springsteen on Broadway, where he does a show every night on Broadway. And one of the things that really had a great impression on me was he was so dismayed by what he'd seen in the last 2 years, and he just said that we had come so far and made so much progress that he was not going to allow us to go backwards. He just couldn't believe we were going backwards. And so that resonated. And so I think, featuring the LGBTQ community this evening, and the idea is to go through history, go through culture, and highlight some of the great figures. And I'm obsessed with celebrity because I'm not one. And so these are some of my favorite artists and writers and poets and musicians and athletes, and it's just my list. Please feel free to drop a comment down below and tell me who I missed or who I should learn more about. And we're gonna just take turns, looking at some of our notes, and let's go with the next one. Let's start off with the artists.
Okay, here we go.
So Donatello, let me go ahead and start with Donatello. Donatello lived in the 14th century, he died in the 15th century. Donatello, if you think about artists, the greatest artist, no question, hands down, is Rembrandt. And I get it, they say he sold his soul to the devil to paint so well, but I'm telling you, when Rembrandt paints, it's like painting with fire, with gold. Rembrandt's work is beautiful, but there's other great artists, Picasso, the Cubist movement, Monet, Manet, Cézanne, the Impressionists, the Surrealists, Dali. All these people are just amazing artists. Da Vinci, Michelangelo, and when you think of sculptors, not only Michelangelo, but our boy Rodin, right? Right? Rodin, the Gates of Hell, the thinker, but Donatello stands out. Donatello stands out because he changed art. Up through the Middle Ages, 1,000 years of the Middle Ages, all of art was based on religious iconography. Scenes from the Bible, very static and stiff figures. Donatello's work, the David, he's an Italian sculptor. That piece is arguably the first entrance into Renaissance art. And from there, it's the first freestanding figure that's sculpted since Greek antiquity.
Oh.
And it revolutionized art. And we had the Renaissance. And this is, by many people, considered a very homoerotic piece.
Yeah. Is that bronze?
It's bronze.
Oh, wow.
It's bronze.
That's.
What are your thoughts on it, Luke?
Yeah, I agree with the homoeroticism. For sure.
Yeah.
I appreciate the work. I haven't heard all this before. This is definitely new to me. I'm really appreciative of his work changing the future of art. And
That's right. Alyssa, your thoughts?
I think it's interesting. I've thought about before how like all of those artists were painting things that they had never like seen before, which
That's
didn't
right.
really make sense.
Good point.
that's a really good point.
And then it just makes sense that someone would finally think, why not paint something I've seen? And I'm sure that was, for some reason, it doesn't seem like that would be forward thinking, but to then do something that nobody's done is always interesting and progressive.
I would argue that's right. And like I said, this was an important piece because it ushered in the Renaissance. And, we finally, with the Middle Ages, I mean, no question, when people are poor, you need something to look forward to, so that afterlife, heaven, and things like that were important, especially to the peasants that worked in the feudal communities of Europe. But when you have things like that, you also stifle science. This represented progression. As you know, Leonardo da Vinci was a Renaissance artist and inventor and painter. He was a great scientist as well. All right, why don't we click the next one?
It kind of looks like Alyssa at the end of a long day, like giving us the two with her arm.
It's
Absolutely.
very gender fluid.
Yeah.
Very androgynous, if I may say. I think that's a very
That's a good
androgynous
word for it.
Yeah, all right. So the next figure, I think the next big figure in art that made an important impact was Andy Warhol. You want to tell us about Andy Warhol?
Most things I know about Andy Warhol are the large sculptures and then the Campbell's soup. I know that's the thing.
We're rocking the Campbell's soup
I've
right
seen
there.
the Campbell's soup. Dr. Berman's, he has some Campbell's soup artwork on it in his kitchen.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah, so Andy Warhol was also important because he ushered in, just as Donatello ushered in the Renaissance, Warhol ushered in modern art. His idea was to combine art with advertising and celebrity. So Andy Warhol, he was homosexual, he wasn't hiding, he was big in the 60s and 70s, and he really was spearheaded the art movement called pop art. And that's how we got our modern art. If anyone goes to France and goes to Paris and to the Pompidou, you'll see all the modern art there. Everyone thinks about the Louvre, the Musée d'Orsay, but got to go to the Pompidou to see modern art.
I think the Campbell's soup painting is at the LA or LACMA.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, we saw it there.
Right. Oh, good. Yeah. And the Marilyn Monroe triptych is there also. Those are two of his famous pieces. Again, this is the Rolling Thunder Scotch Review, so I'd be reminiscent or whatever, or negligent to not bring it back to Dylan at some point. And so if you can hit that. So Warhol not only was an artist, he was a film producer. And he made a lot of movies. And Edie Sedgwick is featured right here, Warhol's in the picture also, but Edie was his superstar. And Edie, unfortunately, died young, but she's the subject of two great songs. Bob Dylan wrote the song Just Like a Woman for her.
Yeah.
And then the Cult, a British band that I'm really fond of, big in the 80s, on their Sonic Temple album, they had a song called Edie Chow Baby. So I thought I'd just throw that in there.
Yeah.
So let's leave the artists and let's move now to playwrights.
Okay.
Tell us about Oscar Wilde, Luke.
Oscar Wilde, he was an Irish poet and a playwright.
Yeah.
His lifespan was between 1854 and 1900.
Yeah, that's
You might know some of, in high school, I think The Importance of Being Earnest was one of our popular reads.
That was a great play.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but
oh my God.
It's a great,
The Importance of Being Earnest. Thanks for bringing that up. That's good.
The Picture of Dorian Gray, another popular
Unbelievable Gothic romance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the last one, The Ballad of the Reading Goal.
Yeah, that was depressing because that was about his time in prison.
Oh, okay.
And I do want to touch on that. And so Oscar Wilde, so he was homosexual. And his book, Picture of Dorian Gray, was serialized in the magazine. And even though the editor cut out 500 words without Oscar's permission, it still offended the British sensibilities in the 1890s. And they thought that he was being indecent. And what the Picture of Dorian Gray was about is this artist painted a portrait of the man named Dorian Gray. And the portrait was so beautiful. And the actual Dorian Gray, who sat for the portrait, was nervous, going, oh my God, I'm going to keep getting old, and that picture's going to stay looking beautiful. So he made a deal with I don't know what forces, but the picture aged, and Dorian, the actual model, stayed young. And he did all sorts of naughty things. and the picture kept recording everything. Well, the Brits couldn't take it, and so they imprisoned him, Oscar Wilde.
Yeah.
They imprisoned him for 2 years, and that last book you mentioned was it was a tough prison. It was tough labor, and he died at a very young age. What I love about Oscar Wilde is he also did fairy tales. You know, things come in threes, ladies and gentlemen. You think about the immortals and composers, Beethoven, Bach, and Mozart. You think about the British invasion, the Rolling Stones, the Who, and the Beatles. And you think about fairy tales, you think about the Brothers Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen, and Oscar Wilde. And the Birthday of the Infant is one of his best fairy tales ever. I have the book upstairs. All right, let's go from playwrights to writers.
Let's do it.
So these writers are American writers that we're going to talk about. Gore Vidal is the first one. I'm going to have Alyssa jump in a minute and tell us a little bit about this, and Luke knows a little bit about this book. But I just want to preface this. When we think about American writers, you know, we always think about Mark Twain. We think about Herman Melville. I mean, Moby Dick. I mean, how can you? That was the great American story. We think about H.G. Wells, who brought many of his science fiction ideas have become science fact. I mean, not the time machine, but other things. We think of early 20th century writers, Robert E. Howard, who created Conan, but we also really resonate to writers like Steinbeck, Hemingway, Farewell to Arms, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Cannery Row by Steinbeck, Whom the Bell Tolls. But not forgotten, but very important, are people like Gore Vidal. Want to tell us a little bit about Gore?
Yeah, so what I know is he's a writer, and he's bisexual, and he wrote a book. One of his most famous books is about a homosexual protagonist, which is not something that was commonly done back in the 40s, 50s, around when he wrote this book. So
That's
it was
right.
definitely something new for that time period.
Yeah, and I think, and it's not what resonated with that book. So first of all, Gore Vidal was an exceptional intellect, probably one of the smartest people ever to live. And his writing was like precision, it was like surgery. He wrote very important satire. And this book, The Importance of the City and the Pillar, is that gay men had been featured in previous books, but they always died at the end of the story because they violated societal norms.
They always die still.
This book was different because this book, the gay protagonist was presented in a sympathetic light, and he survives and lives and triumphs.
Awesome.
Very important book. Very important book. Let's go to the next writer, Luke. All right, Luke, tell us about Truman Capote.
Oh gosh, Truman Capote. He's an amazing, one of the great American novelists of our time, from 1924 to 1984.
Yeah.
He's, of course, I think everyone in this room is familiar with Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah, absolutely.
What an achievement.
What an achievement.
Also, In Cold Blood was one of his popular works.
Yeah, so In Cold Blood, I read it in high school. I don't know if they asked you guys to read it in high school, but this was a journalistic nonfiction book about the murder of a Kansas family. It took Truman Capote, he was gay, it took him 6 years to write this book, and he wrote it with the encouragement of Harper Lee, who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. That Harper Lee was one of Truman's good friends, but one of the most chilling parts of the book was not actually the murder for me of the family when they were tied up in Kansas, but when the killers were put on death row and they were about to be executed. There's a passage in the book where the priest is, doing whatever, and the priest holds out his palms to one of the killers and says, "You want to take my hand and do your confession?" And the prisoner, right before he's going to be executed, the murderer just spits his chewing gum into the priest's hand and goes and sits on the electric chair. And it was just chilling. It was just evil to the bone.
Yeah.
And this is a very powerful book. It's not a fun book like Conan, or it's not, it's deep in a different way, but this is one of the great American novels. Let's talk about women writers. Let's go to the next person.
Now let's get some female representation.
Yeah. Is it true that we've only been talking about men so far?
I think so, but
All right.
that's okay.
We have more on our list.
We have some more on our list. Ursula K. Le Guin. You want to hit that?
Yeah, I know she's part of the LGBTQ community. She actually just died in 2018.
That's right.
She mostly wrote about feminism, and she actually was known for writing about pretty ahead of her times, writing about kind of like gender fluidity and bisexual
That's
type
right.
of concepts.
That's right. That's right. Here we have a Wizard of Earthsea. This is one of her fantasies. The Earthsea trilogy, The Wizard of Earthsea, The Tombs of Antoine, The Farthest Shore, and then she wrote some books after that in that same world. They were fun. They were fantastical. But the key books for me, if you can click it, were The Left Hand of Darkness and The Dispossessed. These two books were amazing. Although they were science fiction per se, she considered herself a novelist, but these books explore feminism. She was not actually among the LGBT community. She was married, she had children, but her work was so powerful, and like you said, it was all about gender fluidity. In The Left Hand of Darkness, the people on this planet are not assigned one specific sex. It just, depending on hormones or what have you, when two people get married, one of them becomes pregnant and one of them doesn't, and they revert back and forth to male and female sexes.
Which one was this?
The Left Hand of Darkness. And I'd probably say that Left Hand of Darkness is my favorite of the two books, but The Dispossessed was an experiment in socialism where all the characters, they were not gender fluid, but they were, the characters would have romantic relationships with the same sex, the opposite sex. There was just so natural. Yeah. And then these books came out in the 60s. She was way ahead of her times. People think of her as one of the greatest feminist writers ever. And both books won the coveted Hugo Award and the Nebula Award.
Wow.
No one's won both of them
I
for both each book.
That's the first I've heard both.
Yeah, each book. So that's great. Let's go on and talk about poets.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about poets.
So I think this would be appropriate for you to talk about, Alyssa. Sappho.
Oh, Sappho? I know. I think this is a Greek poet, if
She
I'm
is.
remembering right.
That's right.
And is this the one that's from the island of? It has a funny name of Lesbos.
Lesbos.
And that's where it's
The island of
it's the
Lesbos. Absolutely.
origin.
That's right. That's right.
And that's kind of where my knowledge ends.
So Sappho was an amazing poet because she was probably, arguably, the first person to put poetry to music. So her poetry was meant to be sang. You know, a lot of poets sang it. The Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey were spoken poems or sung poems, but her poetry was sung to a lyre. You were supposed to be playing a lyre. And Sappho comes from the island of Lesbos, and she was known as the 10th Muse and given all these great names as a great poetess. She was called the poetess, actually. Yeah. And her name has become synonymous with love between women. And so she's incredible. There's a painting there with her and one of her lovers. I think her name is Irina. This is a great painting by Simon. I don't know where it's hanging, but wonderful painting. All right, let's go to the next poet. Oh yeah, look at my notes. Beyond her poetry, she's well known as a symbol of love and desire between women. So I had that.
Yeah, that was great.
Okay, so this is my next favorite poet, Audre Lorde.
Yeah.
Luke, you want to take it?
Oh gosh, I was prepared about Sappho. Let's see here. Audre Lorde. She was not only an American poet, but she was a feminist, a womanist, and a librarian, and then a civil rights activist as well.
Absolutely, and I think she's described herself as Black, lesbian, mother, warrior, poet. Wow. I think that's how she described herself as.
I think so too.
When we think about civil rights, we gotta hit the three. 3 is an important number. And you know, if you think about religion, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, and if you go to my parents' country, India, there's Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer. So 3 is an important number even in religion. But when you think about civil rights, you think about Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi. You focus in on the United States, and you get, who's our boy that just passed away from the Senate? Lewis, right? Lewis, and you got Audre Lorde, and you got Malcolm X, right? So Audre Lorde was amazing. She got a master's degree in librarian work. She worked in a public library in New York for many years, and she was unapologetically a feminist, and she was brilliant. She felt that the distinctions between men and women, the binary distinction of men and women, was too simplistic. You know, in the women's movement and feminism, they wanted to make women this and put them into this specific category to distinguish them from men. But she said that there's many, many subdivisions in women, and that was her theory. And she is just amazing. She is personally one of my heroes. She's a great poet, and Audre Lorde, you gotta give her credit. So that says here, women are powerful and dangerous. Let's see what other notes we have here. Oh yeah, look, her writings are based on the theory of difference. The idea that the binary opposition between men and women is overly simplistic. Although feminists have found it necessary to present the illusion of a solid unified whole, the category of women itself is full of subdivisions. Even straight people like me, my wife's very complicated. You know, women are tricky.
Even straight people are complicated. That's a good takeaway.
All right, good. So yeah, and here we are. Look at these notes. Self-described black lesbian mother warrior poet. That's how she described herself.
Yeah.
She's epic.
I really like that she was a librarian.
I love that.
My mother-in-law is a librarian, and that's how I met my husband. He worked at the library.
Shout out to Dan. That's great. So yeah, she was a librarian. She got a master's in library, in library science or whatever it is. Yeah, library science, 1961. Let's go to sports. One of my favorite things. And who else?
Who else?
All right, Alyssa, take it away.
Sure. This is Megan Rapinoe, or I hope I'm saying it right.
Yep.
I actually know quite a bit about her for once.
All right.
She obviously grew up playing soccer. I think she grew up watching her brother play soccer, but sad story, he ended up getting really involved in drugs, but she kept playing soccer and got really, really good at it, and she has a twin sister who's good at soccer.
Okay.
But kind of going off of this track right now, something about female sports is that I didn't know before kind of going into this topic is that really there were no female sports like in colleges and things like that back until the 1970s after Title IX. So really that's not that long ago. And this was like her whole life. Like she wouldn't be a hero to this country if that were not a thing. So like
Oh, stop it.
You said you didn't study, and like you know so much. You're not even referring to the script.
Bo,
I'm like,
Bo, sit down. Sit down. Sit down.
oh, come here, sit.
All right, go ahead.
So she played soccer all through college and was on the women's national team, obviously. And I can't remember all of her stats, but she's been in multiple World Cups, had gotten multiple gold medals. She was the best player in the last World Cup. And basically, she's also been an important part of LGBTQ culture. She's like involved heavily in activism, and then she also she's playing a big role in the women's national team trying to acquire equal pay for the women's
That's
national
right,
team.
I forgot about that.
So
Yeah.
originally she was one of the only 4 that were part of the team that were filing a lawsuit, and then now the entire team has kind of followed their suit and everybody's was a part of it. And I don't know how everything's ending up, but she was a huge leader in that, which obviously not only is she a big deal in the LGBTQ community, but also for feminist movements as well.
No question. And so, yeah, so she scored in the 2012 Olympics, won the gold for the national team, the U.S. national team. And then for FIFA in 2015 and 2019, she led the team to victory. She's a winger and the captain of the team. So she's pretty solid. And then
the most goals internationally.
oh, and yes, and I think she has had the most international goals in women's soccer. She's just incredible.
And we know she's a nice person. Our intern today, Danielle Greenberg, said she ran into her at a spin class 4 years ago.
That's right.
And she was very personable, like was asking about Danielle's life and like easy to talk to. So she's not only an amazing actress, but just a nice person.
And no question, 4 years ago, she'd already won 2 medals. So
she could have
you
just
know,
Yeah.
you know,
said, "Who are you?" by
That's right.
And it would be really easy for her to just keep on being like a famous athlete and not saying anything and being really popular in media, but she stands up and says things that are unpopular, which is important.
Well, yep, thanks. So, we have here on this picture, we have her kneeling, Colin Kaepernick, and she's kneeling during the national anthem. But really importantly, if you look at her at the British FIFA, what's she wearing? What's the jersey she's wearing?
I think Alyssa was just talking about this person, Lord, Audre Lorde.
Audre Lorde. Oh my God, that is a stressful ringtone.
It's just the pager. Let's see here. Okay, everything's good.
All right, great. So Luke's on call. His call ends at exactly 8:30 when we're going to bust open the Aberlour and sample it. So in any event, but yeah, she wore a Lorde jersey, Audre Lorde, in honor of Audre Lorde,
so cool.
and Megan scored a goal, the first goal in this British match,
Wow.
and they won, and that's a great thing. And this is what Megan said about Audre Lorde, who's the librarian we talked about. She said, Audre Lorde was unapologetically herself. She's so beautifully and powerfully expressed all parts of herself and her experiences at once. She was a woman, a lesbian, a feminist, a person of color, a civil rights activist, and a poet. She understood so clearly that change does not come from playing by the existing set of rules. So, Megan's one of my heroes.
I can totally see why, yeah.
All right, let's move on to cinema.
Here we go.
And we got Jodie Foster on the cast. Take it away, Alyssa.
Well, what I know about her is that she was in a scary movie, Silence of the Lambs, and also she was in The Accused, and in both she won the Academy Award for
That's right.
Best Actress.
That's right. Yeah, she played opposite Anthony Hopkins, who also won an Academy Award for that performance in Silence of the Lambs. In fact, if you look, I don't remember who directed Silence of the Lambs, but he, despite her having won the Academy Award for The Accused a couple of years before, he didn't want to cast her in Silence of the Lambs, but boy, is he glad he did. She was amazing.
Yeah.
Luke, what do you think about Jodie?
I mean, I just gotta echo everything you're saying.
Yeah.
She's an amazing actress. I mean,
My favorite actresses, I gotta tell you, my favorite actress is Juliette Binoche. She's a French actress. She was in The Unbearable Lightness of Being. She was in the Blue, White, I think Red trilogy. She was in The English Patient. She was the nurse taking care of Ralph Fiennes when he was all disfigured. My second favorite actress is Jodie Foster. My third favorite actress is Uma Thurman. She was in Henry and June, and of course Kill Bill. I'm a big Quentin Tarantino fan, but Jodie is really one of my favorite actresses. I love her accent, and if you click on, you'll see the movie that's my favorite of hers.
Oh, click on.
Yep, Contact. She was in the movie Contact. This was written based on a book by Carl Sagan, who is just an amazing scientist who did so much for public education and understanding of science. And this movie was just unbelievable. With Matthew, what's his name, McConaughey? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jodie Foster. Shout out to Jodie Foster.
Hope
I
you're
mean,
watching.
I think we've been hitting the women pretty hard. Ursula K. Le Guin, the writer.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
We
all
did
women.
Audre Lorde, we did Sappho, and we did Megan and Jodie Foster. Let's get back to the men.
Yeah, let's bring it back to the man.
Yeah.
And
All
here
right.
we have
Richard Chamberlain, another one of my favorite actors of all time. Tell us about Richard Chamberlain, Luke.
Yeah, so I actually am disappointed I haven't heard of him until now. I mean, look at him. He's a looker. I Googled him today. Gotta do some research tonight. But he's known for Shogun,
Yeah.
great film, and The Thornbirds. That's pretty much what I know.
So you two were just glimmers in your parents' eyes when these television series came out. This guy was not in big movies in the cinemas. These were serialized things, maybe a week long on television. And Shogun is the early 80s. It was unbelievable. It really introduced American society to Japanese culture. And the idea of Bushido, the samurai. For those of you who watched the Rolling Thunder Scotch Review episode 23, Travis Koranaga is big in Japan. We talked about Bushido. But Shogun was unbelievable. And then the Thornbirds, just beautiful. Richard Chamberlain, gorgeous man, and he's gay, and he's still alive. He's still alive, and I think he lives in Hawaii. Yep, I think he lives in Hawaii. He's just an incredible actor. And you know, my favorite actors, of course, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Russell Crowe.
Those are good ones.
This bad boy, Mickey Rourke, Denzel Washington. You know, I got a bunch of favorite actors, but he distinguishes himself because he's the only actor that wasn't in these big blockbuster movies. He did these television serials. Incredible.
He's incredible.
Okay, let's go. Let's jump back to the girls.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about models.
Well, that's pretty much what I know about Cara Delevingne, that she's a famous model. I think is she a Victoria's Secret model?
I don't think she's a Victoria's Secret model, but she may have done some of their shows. I'm not sure, but she's gender fluid. So tell the audience what this means. What's pansexual? What's gender fluid? What are all these?
Is she?
What's binary? For God's sakes.
Yeah,
I need help on this.
Yeah, we have someone who might be able to chime in. These definitions.
Yeah, damn.
I think she. I'm not sure if she's bisexual.
She was, and then she
now
came
she's
out.
saying she's gender
At least
fluid.
Wikipedia says she's gender fluid. Yeah, you know,
I
you
guess
don't know what to
her
believe.
gender it doesn't really matter to her.
Okay.
She can be attracted to different types of people, and yeah, I'm not really sure because you don't necessarily have to have a preference, and I think that's where some people get confused. Is a lot of people find it easy to like understand straight or gay, but not understanding anything else. And like there's a huge area where you're not just on one or the other.
And I'm beginning to understand that also. I mean, I didn't understand it before, and and I think it also says a lot. I mean, the two of you came to California. California is a very progressive state, and you know, you guys are very happy here, obviously. So, you know, give us time, we'll figure it all out. I love Cara. You know, I know she's a model, and I know actually she's cut down on a bit of her modeling to do more acting, and I think she's a great actress. I'm a very big fan of a French comic book called Valerian, and she was in Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, and I thought she did a fantastic job. She's just seems like a really great person, and I think we're going to see a lot of her. She's pretty young. She's like 27, 28. Yeah.
Yeah, she's giving a really good smile there.
All right, let's jump into comic books. I want to talk about comic books for a second. Now, you know, I just mentioned Valerian, but, you know, we talked about, started this episode off talking about, you know, how Springsteen had noted, you know, how far we've come from the civil rights movement and how he's just so, he just can't believe that we're going to go backwards. But the X-Men were a comic book, and a lot of you young people, a lot of my subscribers, you know, I don't know the demographics exactly of the people that subscribe to the Rolling Thunder Scotch Review, but I'm delighted to learn that many of them appear to be young based on the comments that I get on you know, down below. But the X-Men came out in the early 60s. The young people know the X-Men from the movies, but the X-Men was about a group of mutants. They were not people that, you know, like Batman, who trained to be an athlete and a scientist and a detective, or Spider-Man, who got bit by a radioactive spider. These people were born different. And they were discriminated against and persecuted. And the X-Men, we got something else going on.
This is Desiree, yeah.
All right.
Hey, Desiree.
Please stand by.
Have you seen her, or?
Well, this is new.
She's anxious. What?
Where'd you get this one back?
She just appeared.
Yeah, Diana did talk to her about some new stuff, so that might have stressed. She's probably under a lot of stress.
X-Men. So X-Men, a group of mutants persecuted by society, led by Professor Xavier, Professor X, the bald-headed man in the wheelchair, who really wanted the mutants to coexist with human beings.
Yeah.
He was the stand-in for Martin Luther King. But Magneto, who was more into violence, wanted the mutants to take over the Earth. He was the Malcolm X stand-in. So the X-Men really resonated because they were a reflection of the civil rights era. Came out in the 60s, but it took comic books 40 years, 50 years until we got our first big or really prominent LGBTQ superhero, and that was Batwoman. So Kate, what's her name? Kate?
It's I think it's Catherine Kate
Kate
Kane.
Okay, tell us about Kate.
Oh man, I thought the girls were Alyssa's territory.
All I know is that there is a show right now where they're featuring Batwoman. I think it's like I don't remember what channel it's on, but yeah, I mean it's like the first time that a prominent superhero has been a gay woman. So
That's right.
yeah, she's played by Ruby Rose on the show on TV.
And that's what you guys know. I mean, but remember, all this stuff started from comics. All you Avengers fans, Endgame and everything, this all started in the comic books, damn it.
Yeah.
And so the source material for Batwoman being a lesbian superhero comes from the comic books. And the comic books are amazing. You can see that's her and her lover, their wedding. Batwoman is an amazing character. I'm a huge Batman fan. And so I just love the fact that Batwoman, who's so big, is also part of the LGBTQ community. Let's continue. I'm going to talk about Alan Moore because he's my boy.
Yeah, go for it.
Alan Moore's a British literary giant. When I think of the greatest writers of all time, it's Alan Moore. Alan Moore he's straight, but he knows people. He knows his audience. Let's give it another click.
Oh.
Two of his famous works, Watchmen and V for Vendetta, have been made into movies.
V for Vendetta is so good.
It's so, oh my
idea.
God, it's so good. But Watchmen, it's a comic book, came out in the 1980s. It was listed in Time magazine as one of the 100 greatest novels of the 20th century. And it's a comic book.
Wow.
So Alan, let's click it up.
Oh, he's got a lot of clicks.
Alan likes to take on causes. And so in the 1990s, the British government enacted a rule, I think it was Section 28, which basically said that cities cannot promote homosexual material, they can't promote anything like that. And so Alan was a part of a group of artists that formed this organization called ARG, Artists Against Rampant Government Homophobia. And he wrote this book, The Mirror of Love, a comic book where he goes through history. He takes people like Shakespeare, Emily Dickinson, Sappho, all these key people, and he traces the history of same-sex love through history all the way up into modern times, and then comments on what's going on in modern times. And that's just one of the most beautiful comic books I've ever read,
Yeah.
Mirror of Love. The some of the people he brings up we didn't talk about today, like Shakespeare, Emily Dickinson, George O'Keeffe, because it's not clear whether they were part of the LGBTQ community, so I wanted to steer away from that. But Alan thinks they are. Ultimately, Section 28, that law was repealed first in Scotland in 2002 or 2003, and then a few years later in the rest of the UK it was repealed. But Alan Moore's my boy. Alan Moore's the greatest literary giant, and he's just amazing. The Mirror of Love, if you guys ever have time, you guys should read that. I'll maybe give you guys a copy of it. All right, let's now go from comic books to one of my favorite topics, fashion. Alyssa, Luke,
I'll talk about Versace
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, let's talk about Versace.
I think you all know, like, he created a fashion empire. He was friends with everyone, like Madonna, Cher, Tupac, Diana, the Princess of Wales. You know, the list goes on. I think he was one of the first, fashion designers to link fashion with music, which I think is really cool.
Totally.
Love both those things.
Yeah.
And then he kind of ties back to the Jeopardy discussion at the beginning of this, the end of the world kind of discussion. Unfortunately, he met a really sad end. He was shot and killed outside of his home in Miami. So I think that's where it brings us back to that really real discussion of, hate being a very powerful thing, unfortunately. Especially
when these killers commit suicide themselves, then we never know. So no one knows. So this guy killed 5 people.
Yeah.
They seem to be, I don't know if they were all related or not. It's just bizarre. And it's just unfortunate because Versace was just an astonishing designer. I mean, I know I rock a lot of Armani suits and things like that. I hear that Armanis are old school now, but let me tell you something. Versace taught me, he didn't tell me personally, but by watching his fashion, you got to have this solid dimple below the knot. And so Versace's big.
Yeah.
Let's click the next thing. We've got some of his models there. Oh my God, so amazing. We'll blow these pictures up for when we in post production so that people can see this stuff. Okay, let's talk about musicians. Musicians. Anyone want to tackle Elton John?
Well, I mean, he has his famous song. Benny and the Jets, Candle in the Wind, Tonight.
Oh my God. Bo, come here. Bo, come here. Be a good boy. Yeah, thanks. You tell them. So, you mentioned Benny and the Jets, Candle in the Wind, which was written for Marilyn Monroe, but then he dedicated to Princess Diana when she at her funeral. Someone Saved My Life Tonight. In fact, two of those songs you mentioned, Benny and the Jets and Someone Saved My Life Tonight. It's interesting. Axl Rose, my boy from Guns N' Roses, who I'm a huge fan of, he grew up in. Actually, him and I are both from Indiana. If you think about the famous people that came out of Indiana, there's Axl Rose, Michael Jackson, and myself. But in any event, Axl inducted Elton John into the Rock Hall of Fame, and he said that when he heard the song Benny and the Jets, that's when Axl decided he wanted to be a musician. But then when interviewed later and said, "What's your favorite song by Elton John?" Axl said it was Someone Saved My Life Tonight. Wow. So Axl made a mistake, or he left. There was an omission, and maybe it was intentional, maybe he was under stress. But at the Rock Hall, he said, when you think of the greatest songwriters, Lennon and McCartney from the Beatles. Then he gave a shout out to Jimmy Page and Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin, and then he mentioned Elton John and Bernie Taupin. But he forgot Mick Jagger and Keith Richards from the Stones. So I don't know if it was intentional. Maybe he thinks that Elton John and Taupin are above that, but I got a shout out to my boy Mick Jagger and Keith Richards because they were solid. Yeah. But Elton, it's interesting. I took my son to see him on his farewell tour, and he talked to the audience for a while. He said that by the time he got sober in 1990, and he finally got sober, he realized he had just caught up with his life, and he wanted to do more. So he formed Elton John's AIDS Foundation. In the past 30 years, hey. Oh my God, guys are gonna knock things over.
Where's our production staff? We need a
Oh my God, they're gonna knock the video. Created the Elton John AIDS Foundation, and they've raised over $600 million to help people in 55 different countries for HIV prevention, HIV detection, and treatment of HIV and AIDS-related diseases. So Elton John really has made a difference. Yeah. Next up, Freddie Mercury. Who wants to talk about Freddie?
It's your turn.
Freddie. Yeah, Freddie. I love Freddie. I had no idea. Like, growing up, my brother would play Bohemian Rhapsody all the time. I'd like singing with him out loud. We have so much fun with it, and it was just amazing to grow up and find out, he's part of our LGBT community. I can actually look up to him in even like higher meaning and everything. But Bohemian Rhapsody, Killer Queen, Good Old Fashioned Lover Boy, he's got amazing work. So.
And did both of you see the movie, the Bohemian Rhapsody movie?
I saw the part of it.
All right, I think you should see it. It's really good, really well done. I see Dan nodding over there. He seemed to have liked it. Dana, did you see it? Dana's part of our live audience, and but hey, great movie. And then I should have mentioned that Elton was the subject of another movie last year called Rocket Man. So so, and I love those movies, those songs you mentioned, Bohemian Rhapsody, Good Old Fashioned Lover Boy, Killer Queen. But the movie ends with Freddie's diagnosis and revelation of AIDS, or at least being HIV positive, and his Live Aid concert. What the movie doesn't follow is his decline. And Freddie did not reveal his diagnosis, at least in 1985 when Live Aid occurred. Actually, I think his diagnosis was revealed, at least publicly, just a few weeks or a few months before he died. But what Freddie did was, this is a lonely man. He had no wife, no family, no husband, and he just kept working. And although I love those songs you mentioned, some of the most powerful songs he wrote were the ones where Queen had stopped touring as a band, and they were just recording. And he wrote songs like These Are the Days of Our Lives, Was It All Worth It, The Show Must Go On, Let Me Live, and Mother Love. Those 5 songs really detail his decline. And also, maybe the song I Think I'm Going Slightly Mad, because there is this phenomenon called AIDS dementia. He may have been suffering from that. But those songs resonate. They're so powerful. Freddie was my love and my hero. I grew up with Freddie. I saw Queen in the early 80s when I was in high school, and he was just unbelievable.
Yeah, talking about his story reminds me of the discussion we had that, you know, art comes from a suffered soul, and I think that
Art,
a lot of people we've talked about today fits that, but for sure, like thinking about his movie and hearing his life story and what you're explaining, like it's very true.
yeah, art comes from a suffering soul. That's really,
You taught me that. I think it's a really
wow,
good thing to think about.
very, very, very moving. Let's talk about my boy Rob Halford. So I'm a big classic rock and heavy metal fan. Rob Halford is the singer for Judas Priest. Judas Priest, a heavy metal band. Again, there's three: Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, and Judas Priest. Now those are the three metal bands from England. And there you can see Rob rocking the Harley. And Judas Priest, not only do they make great music, but they brought leather and studs to heavy metal. And Rob is gay. The thing about Rob, though, is he's a little different than Freddie, because Freddie didn't reveal anything until near the end. Rob came out in '97. Now, granted, he'd been with Judas Priest for 25 years, but he's been out of the closet, so to speak, for the past 23 years, and he was nervous because he's the singer of probably one of the greatest metal bands in the world. Metal is mainly a hetero male type of thing, and he was really worried what the response was going to be if all these metalheads found out that their favorite band's lead singer was gay. We embraced him full on. He didn't lose a beat. It was the most empowering thing for him to come out, and his voice is utterly incredible. It's like laser precision. He's one of the greatest vocalists ever, not just of metal. And they brought the leather and studs look to heavy metal. Let's click it. Let's look at two of their album covers: Sad Wings of Destiny and that beautiful, beautiful cover for the British Steel album. My hand holding a razor blade, because get it? Heavy metal, steel, and they're from England, British Steel. Unbelievable cover. Let's go to the next one. I want to talk about Lady Gaga next. I'm going to have you talk about her, but I just want to mention, shout out to Bob Dylan. Judas Priest got their name, Judas Priest, from a Bob Dylan song, The Ballad of Frankie Lee and Judas Priest. So, all right, let's talk about Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga obviously has her song Born This Way, but she's kind of like a modern day gay icon. I think she was known for, correct me if I'm wrong, she was known for, like, people have said to her, like, we can't tell if you're a girl or a guy, and like people kind of make those comments to her in like a negative light, and she always just kind of says, so who cares?
Exactly.
So that's really a different way of thinking than
So
what
she's
we're used to.
I totally agree. So she's, heterosexual, but her fan base, it's really the gay community really supports her and loves her. And this is where we got to bring up Britney Spears, because I'm getting called out because I'm not putting Britney Spears on this, but I'm not a Britney Spears fan. Oops, I did it again. Come on, that's not my jam. But Lady Gaga, I love her music. Absolutely love her music. My favorite song of hers is Judas. You want to click this? And there you go. That's from the video Judas. And Lady Gaga, Madonna or someone must have said she's going to be the next Madonna, and Lady Gaga said, I want to be the next Iron Maiden. She goes to metal concerts. In fact, let's click it. There she is with my boy Rob Halford from Judas Priest. So Gaga's a closet metalhead, and her music's energetic, and I just love her. Let's talk about Bob Dylan really quickly. Let's click it. So Bob's a heterosexual guy. He's been married at least twice. One was a secret marriage that got people discovered it after the fact. But Bob, again, big civil rights activist. MGM was going to put out an album of gay wedding songs where they wanted to re-record American standards, but for the gay community. And they asked Bob Dylan, do you want to be a part of it? And Bob not only said absolutely, he goes, but I know just the song. So he wrote the song, or took the song "She's Funny That Way" and changed the pronoun to "he's funny that way." And he released his song is with several other artists on this album called Universal Love, and it's an opportunity to give the gay community wedding songs that they can get married to.
Yeah,
So
I wish that was more well known.
Well, that
When we planned our wedding, we had that challenge. Like, we loved the song, but realized the adjectives didn't fit.
that's right.
I had no idea this was the thing. We found alternatives, and it wasn't that hard. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's good to know that stuff like this.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And there you go for Bob. All right, let's go to science. Alan Turing. Who wants to talk about him?
Alan Turing, I know he's famous for the Imitation Game. I saw this play in college. I think I saw it like in a small theater. And it's really kind of sad. It's like, you know, he was a very smart guy, English mathematician, computer scientist, logician, cryptanalyst, and father of theoretical computer science and artificial intelligence.
That's right.
tying back to
Father,
some of our
father
old
of
stuff.
artificial intelligence.
Yeah. And he had crucial engagements during World War II, including the Battle of the Atlantic, and he ultimately helped win the war. You might be able to help explain that a little more for me.
So he was able to decode the Nazi
Yes.
messages,
Oh, yeah.
and it allowed the Allies to win several important battles, including the Battle of the Atlantic. And because of his work, and this is, you know, I mentioned, I'm not really talking about these people's gay lives or same-sex lives, except when it matters. And with Oscar Wilde, I thought it was atrocious that he was imprisoned in England for, you know, the portrait picture of Dorian Gray. But we're going to have to bring it up here also. And this was not meant to be a depressing episode, but Alan Turing, his work led to the end of World War II at least 2 years before it would have ended, and it saved 12 million lives.
Yeah. Wow.
12 million lives, and they ended the war 2 years early. And because of the homophobia in Britain, he was arrested, and you know, didn't get a lot of credit for his work because there was all this homophobia in Britain. And a lot of his work was covered under the Secrets Act, which was this because he did a lot of government work. So he didn't get the credit during his lifetime. But what was sad was he accepted chemical castration instead of going to prison. So he was castrated. And he ended up committing suicide at age 42, cyanide poisoning. That is heartbreaking to me. Someone who saved 12 million lives because of intolerant bastards.
Yeah.
And it's sad because the intolerance continues.
Yeah.
We got to talk about a doctor. You know, we're all doctors in this room, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about poets, playwrights, songwriters, athletes, fashion designers, scientists, writers. We got to talk about a doctor.
We just have to. The first one that came into my mind, I think all of our minds, Dr. Major, Dr. Carol Major.
Click that bad boy.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Carol Major, Carol Ann Major. What an incredible physician.
Yeah.
Alyssa, tell me what you know about her.
Well, we work with her all the time at UCI. She's a maternal fetal medicine specialist, so she takes care of people that have high-risk pregnancies. And one of the things that she specializes in most is diabetes in pregnancy. She has numerous publications, and she's an incredible doctor, incredible person. She provides great patient care.
Absolutely. Luke, you're up.
I know, she's like the heart and soul of so many elements of our residency. She has a really long past with not only some of our current residents that just graduated, but tons of residents. She's known for, I think Paul told me this funny story. She has a perfume that he notices, and he smelt it in the ED once. He didn't know she was around, but he smelt this perfume and immediately felt warm and felt like a hug, like an embrace, because she is known for her hugs. You'll see her and you'll just get this hug that you might have just come out of a crazy hemorrhage, or just got to work late and got chewed out by someone, and she gives you that hug, and it instills in you this joy, this warmth, this love, and confidence that you got it, and you just gotta keep going. And I think she's the definition of inspiration for everyone that meets her and works with her.
Couldn't agree more. I gotta say something about Carol.
Yeah, you go for it.
So, you younglings have been here for a few years. I've been at UCI since 1990. I was a medical student in 1990. By 1992, I was doing my rotation. 93, I was like Dana doing a sub-I. Carol didn't really get to know her until I was a resident here. And like you said, she's famous for her hugs, but she became one of my absolute role models and heroes because she's smart, she's kind, and there's some other quality about her that I can't really grasp, because I have, like I said, I love celebrity and I have my heroes. Dr. Desai is one of my heroes. Dr. Quilligan's one of my heroes. But look at Carol. New England Journal of Medicine. How many doctors are in the New England Journal of Medicine? Very few. So she's a brilliant researcher. She's a phenomenal clinician. Takes such great care of patients. Never phones it in. I was a resident for 4 years, suffering on labor and delivery. Oh, I couldn't take it. I wanted to just be an oncology surgeon, but man, when she was there, I was just so impressed. She's was the residency director for many years, but now she's one of the deans of the university. You just can't, you cannot sum up what she's accomplished in 10 words or less. I mean, she's just incredible. She's a mother, a wife, 4 kids, I think, beautiful children. She has a beautiful wife, and she's just such an advocate.
Yeah.
So I have a couple funny stories about her. I was an intern, or maybe I was Dana. I was a 4th year medical student. And I was interested in cancer and pregnancy because I wanted to be a cancer doctor. So I started publishing case reports on cancer and pregnancy. She just happened to make the fatal comment on rounds one day that, oh, she has a thyroid cancer and pregnancy case. She took care of a patient that did really well. So she happened to be on call that night, so did I. I went up there, and here I'm a medical student. I go, Carol, can we get that case? There was no EMR then. So Carol took me to her office at midnight after things had slowed down on labor and delivery, and she hunted for the chart for like hours. And then once she found it, 3 a.m., I sat down and started writing the case, and I know she wanted to just go to the call room and take it, get a couple hours sleep, but she stayed with me through the whole night. We wrote the case report together, submitted it for publication, got accepted, and hopefully it helped other patients who just had to deal with thyroid cancer and pregnancy. But she was up all night with me, and as a medical student, I would never do that with a medical student. I would not do it with I wouldn't do it with my resident. I would not do it with my fellow. I need to sleep at midnight. I ain't staying up. But she did that, and that meant a lot to me. Next thing, fixed everything, but the best part was she never lost her sense of humor when she was sick. She was so miserable in the ER, and when she was on the gurney, I was taking her on the gurney to go to the OR, and she said, and we kept banging the gurney on the hall, on the doors and stuff, and it was just getting her so miserable. She goes, Krish, will you just throw me in the gurney into the elevator and hit the 5th floor? This is when we had 5 tower, and just leave me alone and let what happens happens. She was just so miserable, but she did great. Anyways, we'll see if she wants us to mention that or not. But she was fantastic. Great person. Let's click to the next slide.
What else she's up to.
Yeah. White coats for Black Lives. She kneeled in honor of George Floyd. 8 minutes and 22 seconds, I think, is that what it was? It was terrible, and she said she did that with a lot of people on campus. But shout out to Carol Major. What a role model, and what a phenomenal physician scientist she is.
Yeah.
So grateful to have her teaching us and learning from her all these years.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's episode 25 of the Rolling Thunder Scotch Review. It was a little freestyle at the end. We didn't have a script for Carol. Alyssa, noted that on our notes. We get down to physician, it just says Carol Major. There's nothing written there because we thought we could do it by heart. We did ask Carol for permission to use her as the physician example, and she was very gracious and said as long as she didn't have to wear one of those gas masks that other people have worn, then it's okay. So we're going to go ahead and, what you've all been waiting for, we're going to sample the Aberlour. This is from a Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey distillery. I think I've told the story that you know, I'm a big history buff, and so is my father. And when I finally got to go to Ireland, went with my dad, my wife, my 3 kids, my in-laws, their best friend George, my wife's good friend Michelle with her husband, their 2 kids, and one of their friends from high school. Suffice to say, it was like 15, 16 of us, and I saw nothing I wanted to see. So, but this was a twofer. We were going from Ireland to Scotland, so on the way to Scotland on the plane, I told my dad, I go, Pops, man, we got to get off this tour here. If we want to see anything other than a restaurant, we need to break off and do our own thing. So my dad and I, when we landed in Scotland, we went on the Whisky Trail. This is about 8-9 years ago. And there's 5 regions in Scotland. There's the Highlands, where the Scotches have chocolates in them, or hints of chocolates and berries. We've got the Lowlands, we got Campbelltown, we got Isla, and we got Speyside. And Speyside is where the Scotch is a little smoky. Okay. So I don't know if you guys are going to be able to dig this, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Since my residents gave this to me, shout out to Nisha Garg, Melissa Perez, Cariza Mercurio, Rachel Newman,
we forgot Jen.
Jen Tinoco,
Tanchioco,
and Brad Bosse. Shout out to those. That's only 6, huh?
Marisa Lou.
And Marisa Lou, my G1 College Club. You know, they gave this to me, and I've been really looking forward to a day where we could sample it, and I thought this was the don't want to burn myself.
I'm really honored we get to drink the whiskey.
Well, and I'm gonna say this: Dana's a little bit of a lightweight.
So just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So Dana's got to drive. Dana's a responsible sub-I. Dana was here for the program, and we did break open Glenmorangie, I think 18 years of age.
18 years of age.
And
I can smell the smokiness.
Yeah, I can smell the smoke.
Or maybe it's the candle that will burn.
And Dana didn't finish her Scotch, and so I thought, maybe she didn't like it, maybe she's not a Scotch fan, but she actually says she pounds the whiskey pretty hard at home, but she's a lightweight, and so she was responsible because she was driving, so she only drank a little, and I appreciate that. Because imagine how bad I'd feel if something ever happened to her.
Yeah.
She's a young woman with
I know
a
what
lot
will we
to
do
look
next
forward.
week.
Why don't we hand these off to our friends over there, and then this is for Dana. Let's give that to Dana, and then I'm going to read. There's some tasting notes.
Oh.
I'm going to read that as you guys. Let's take a look here. So.
Makes me think my grandpa.
Let's take a look here. This is the Aberlour. Sure, I'm butchering the pronunciation. Okay, Aberlour whiskey was born in the Speyside village of Aberlour, made with local spring water. Nice. From the Ben Rinnies and barley, now locally sourced from the fields near our distillery. Okay, we mature this single malt in 2 different casks, American oak and Spanish sherry. Their rich flavors infuse our whiskey over time. After 16 years, our craftsmen bring the spirits in both casks together. This is an art, not a science. To get just the right balance of depth and flavor, as our founder, James Fleming, knew back in 1879, the truth is always in the tasting. So the look, let's take a look.
Yeah.
The look is gold, rich golden amber. Do you agree?
I agree, yeah.
Alyssa?
I agree.
Okay. The aroma is sweet floral with a spicy nuttiness. Let's take a listen.
That's hard to pick up.
I get the floral.
You get the floral?
Get the floral.
The spicy.
I think you're just saying nuts.
You got the nuts?
Smells like nuts.
Dan's got the nuts.
Dan's nuts. Smells like nuts.
All right. Well, let's taste it. So let me give you the tasting notes here. The taste is sherried with floral, spice, fruit, and oak. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, Dr. Tawari. Thank you, graduating class of 2019, or 20, yeah, it was 20.
Got the smoke.
Yeah. That's smooth.
It's very smooth, isn't
I'm
it?
surprised. They really like you. They got you
They really got me
a
a
bottle of whiskey.
great bottle. The finish is long, warm, and fruity with a little spice. The deed is in the tasting. So I'm delighted with this. Class of 2020.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is Your thoughts, Alyssa.
It's good. Very, very drinkable.
Luke?
Yeah, no, I'm impressed. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as your 18-year-old whiskey that we had.
18 years of age.
18 years of
I didn't
age.
get to try that one.
Whiskey
so
from the
I don't know.
program. I might have assumed this class was cheap, but I can't wait to drink this again. I'll always remember them and everything they taught me. Thank you guys.
Definitely the best I've ever had.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, there you go. There you have it. Episode 25 of the Rolling Thunder Scotch Review. As I said at the beginning, make sure you leave us a comment. We want to know which prominent members of the LGBTQ community that have informed our culture. Who did we miss? What did we get wrong? Drop us a comment down below. Smash that like. Ring the notification bell. We drop content every week. And you want to make sure you get access to it. And then make sure you're subscribed to the channel. As I said, we're going to give a giveaway at 50,000 subscribers. I got a great Batman statue, as well as a bottle of the Abomination batch number 1 from the Lost Spirits Distillery in Los Angeles. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.